Our first section is called Location, Location, Location. So I will hand things off to our wonderful presenters. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Okay.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Hello, check. Great. Thank you all for coming. My name is Kalia Livingston. I am from the CVOEO, which is the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity. I work with the Fair Housing Project, which is part of our housing advocacy programs, as the Fair Housing Project Education and Outreach Coordinator. Today, I'm here co-hosting this panel with Rachel Batterson, and we will be doing an interactive activity. So everything that people need will be found at that front table back there. We'll need folks to be in groups of a max of 8. We have 8 assigned roles. Each group will need a map, and there's also some Expo markers to draw on the map and some napkins as an eraser. And we also have a handout that will have some helpful information to help guide the interactive activity, as well as just some constraints to also help with how the conversation can go. So make sure to grab one of each of those handouts back there.
If you're at a table of 1 or 2 or 3, join another table because we need at least 5.
Oh, awesome. Well, yeah. And you're in the location. The judge.
Next slide, please, Eric.
Because there's 2.
So just a little bit about CVOEO. We have 3 different offices. I work out of our Burlington office. We also have services in Addison County and Franklin County. We serve as the Community Action Program for the Champlain Valley area and the state. And we have 12 programs in total, including our housing advocacy programs, weatherization, mobile home projects, Head Start, and we also have a food pantry. I'm going to do a brief overview of fair housing. And if folks have any questions, we can get to those at the end of the presentation, but we're hoping to speak less and have more time for the activity. Fair housing is the right to equal opportunity and housing choice and the right to rent, buy, or live in a dwelling free from discrimination. In Vermont, the Vermont Fair Housing Act includes enforcement for something that is referred to as affirmatively furthering fair housing, which is a provision to make sure that past harms created by housing discrimination and segregation are being worked to be remedied. So that's included in our state Fair Housing Act. However, there is seemingly less priority for a FFH from a federal level of enforcement. So it's great that we have more protections through the Vermont Fair Housing Act. Where people live is important to their well-being, as we all know. Where people live determines their access to work, healthcare, recreation, and just helps with their economic and social stability as a whole. So it's important that we have these fair housing protections to support people who have been historically vulnerable to experiencing housing discrimination. And a bit about the history of the Fair Housing Act. When slavery was initially abolished in this country in the 1800s, the Civil Rights Act was passed as a way for formerly enslaved people to get into contracts, so get employment and housing and things of that sort. However, it was basically unenforceable due to the social climate and political climate during that time. So it took nearly 100 years before the second Civil Rights Act was passed, which also included the Fair Housing Act. Prior to that second Civil Rights Act, there was a Kerner Commission that was sent out to get more information about why there was so much disruption taking place in American cities regarding the treatment of African Americans during this time. And that commission basically concluded that it wasn't due to Black violence or Black people being inherently harmful, but it was due to all of the oppressive and harmful systems that were impacting Black people. So that was really helpful in the process of getting the second Civil Rights Act passed. And then just a week after that, in 1968, the Fair Housing Act was included in the Civil Rights Act after Martin Luther King was assassinated by a white supremacist. So equal or equitable access to housing has been a fight for a lot of the history of this country, and it's also been crucial to civil rights and making sure that people have access to sustainable housing. There are 7 federally protected classes. All states have to have enforcement to enforce discrimination based on these protected classes. States can also elect additional protected classes. In Vermont, we have several. We just recently elected an additional protected class, which is immigration status and citizenship. So people should not be experiencing any form of discrimination based on membership in any of these classes. Thank you. One second. Next one. Yeah, thank you. And everybody is protected under fair housing laws. Everybody has some sort of membership in a protected class. And it includes people who are seeking housing as well as people who are already occupying a dwelling.
Sorry about the hassle.
Next slide here. And when do fair housing laws apply? They apply to all residential dwellings, anybody connected to housing, so that includes a property manager or any of the staff under a property management. It also includes all advertisements and statements. So there are some exemptions to fair housing laws, but those exemptions are never applicable to discriminatory advertisements or statements. And there are several penalties for people who breach fair housing laws as well. So you can see here, one of the main ones is having to pay for attorney fees, compensation for damages, so on and so forth. So it's important that people are aware of what fair housing laws are and what their responsibility is for carrying them out. Next slide. And here's just some examples of the impacts of housing discrimination. There's less accessible housing for vulnerable populations. People who have historically been vulnerable to experiencing housing discrimination are often put in positions where their housing choice is limited or hindered, and their housing stability can be at stake. Housing providers can sometimes neglect habitability issues or use rent increases to push certain people out of apartments. So people with fixed incomes tend to be disabled or elderly and cannot generally afford the immense rent increases or cost of moving if they experience conflicts in their housing. People with disabilities can be denied necessary accommodations or modifications to create accessibility in their homes. When people with disabilities are denied these requests, it can create challenges in their peaceful enjoyment and access of their homes. And also survivors of sexual assault, abuse, or stalking. Some of their personal information could be disclosed, and that can create unsafety in their space as well. And generally, when housing providers don't follow fair housing laws, they can receive monetary penalties if complainants file formal complaints, which can be done through the Vermont Human Rights Commission as well as the Department of Housing and Urban Development if people are discriminated against based on one of those federally protected classes. And just some examples of what exclusionary zoning has looked like in Vermont. The interactive activity that you all will be doing will be a mock discussion. You'll all be working as a committee to build housing in a fake town. And these are some of the things that have come up in reality in our state regarding exclusionary zoning. So there has been some prohibition or restriction of multifamily homes. Many Vermont towns have zoning codes that do not allow multifamily apartments to be built. We also see a character of area, which people can basically say that development in a certain part of town can affect the character of the area, and that's a way to kind of have a NIMBY attitude and block affordable housing from being built in a town. There's restrictions on different types of housing as well due to zoning. This can reinforce residential segregation, and there's also some limits on lot sizes as well. So can be a minimum amount of a lot that people can develop on, which are larger than what people can generally afford, and that can cause a decrease in what amount of housing can be built in a specific part of town. And I'll pass it over to Rachel, and we will soon get started with the activity.
Morning, everyone. So I'm Rachel Batterson from Legal Aid. We're a civil legal services organization throughout the state. Our services are free. We represent a lot of people. We do a lot of outreach and education. We have a website. That's about it for that. Next slide. So this is what I'm just going to cover. Why do realtors and everyone else say location, location, location? The Fair Housing Act that Kalia just described and the Vermont Fair Housing and Public Accommodations Act applies to land use planning that impacts dwellings. That includes infrastructure like wastewater. Vermont also has the Environmental Justice Act, which was passed fairly recently, that says that we should, it charges certain agencies and commissions and boards with ensuring that people of color, low-income people, and limited English proficiency people aren't denied the benefits of environmental goods or disproportionately subjected to environmental harms. Act 181, which I think a lot of people have heard about, revised the whole Act 250, which is Vermont's environmental law. It also included replacing the Natural Resources Board with the land use something board. Review, thank you. Don't know why that went out of my mind. So I just want to say that we called this a game, and that was a little bit false advertising. We didn't want to call it an interactive exercise because that sounds boring, but we did want to make it more interesting and to actually feel like you're doing the thing that is at the heart of this area of fair housing and land use planning. I also want to mention that for some people, some of this discussion might be more triggering than for other people. And if you look at your roles, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you're going to be playing a member of a town, and you're going to play this fictional person. If you feel like you really feel uncomfortable playing that person, just ask somebody else to play that person, and just be, kind to your teammates about that. And then at the end, we are going to have a report back, as usual, so be prepared. And we're going to be saying, asking you what you found most surprising or interesting, and how you will use this information or experience in real life. And I may have just covered everything on my slides. So, location, location, location. Why do we say that? Because where you live determines everything else about your life. Whether you have access to foods or you live in a food desert. Where your kids go to school, how good are those schools? sometimes how good is the quality of the housing? Is it up to code or not? One thing, services, are they better or worse? Are you located next to the town dump or are you located next to the town forest? All of those things impact your health and for kids, their long-term, their lifetime outcomes in health, educational attainment, and financial attainment. There's lots of studies of this, but I'm not going to go into that. So this both means that it's really important for lower income people to be able to live in higher opportunity areas, and for areas that are low opportunity to get investment so that they become higher opportunity. And I wanted to mention one thing that's not on this, which is super important to civil rights, which is voting. So we all hear a lot nationally about gerrymandering and about places where there aren't any polls. There's 15 polls if you're in a white section, and there's 2 polling stations if you're in a black section. If you don't have white and black sections, you don't have that problem, right? So that about covers that. So in Vermont, you can open the newspaper any day or read it online, as we all do, and see opposition to more affordable housing. And this ranges from whether it's tax credit below market housing to high-end luxury apartments or condos even. And sometimes just to infrastructure itself, like wastewater. And of course, the opposition to housing that's below market is more vociferous than others, but I have recently seen in South Burlington an opposition to something where the opposition was that we don't need any more luxury apartments, we need more affordable housing. But then every other time when you try to build affordable housing, we don't need that. Well, we need that, but we don't need it here. So that's a big problem in Vermont. The reason this is so important is for 2 things. One is that there is a very high statistical correlation between being black or brown and being low income because of systemic racism. So where you build housing that people can live in that are lower income, or not necessarily low income, but not at or below the median income is important. It's also important because Vermont actually has an opportunity to not become like the rest of the country. We don't have so much development that's already entrenched. And so if we do things right now, 50 years from now, we will actually have an inclusive state. That's it. So I think that Kalia covered this. It's also in your written outline if you want to refer to it. But I think of these as things that you can say to people who are opposing affordable housing. Well, the Fair Housing Act actually says that you can't discriminate in land use planning based on these things. And the Environmental Justice Act says that we're supposed to ensure that where people are able to live and what they're subjected to in terms of environmental harms and environmental goods doesn't depend on their race or their income. And then the impetus a little bit for this exercise that we're about to do is Act 181, which charged, basically the housing needs assessment said we need tons of housing everywhere of all kinds. And then the legislature charged DHCD with deciding how many in each county, and also charged RPCs, regional planning commissions, with working with towns to figure out how many housing units they were going to put in their particular town and where and what kind. So that's what you're going to be doing, is doing that exercise in a fictional town. And I lost my person. So your goal here in this quote-unquote game is to add 500 units of housing in this little fictional town of Taylorsboro. And you have to decide what kinds of housing and where it will go. And the map, if you look at the one that you should have in front of you, and if you don't, it's at that back table, I think right there. This map doesn't actually show this, but the one you have does. There's some vacant lots or some derelict properties. You should definitely imagine that the map doesn't stop where the borders are on this drawing. You're going to each, there's a list of roles on a piece of paper. You're each going to take one and read through that, see who you want to be, and then you're going to stick to that role. And remember that you're not you, you're that person that that role describes, and you're going to play that role. And again, if you really feel uncomfortable with a particular role, then ask somebody else to do that. Pick one that you feel comfortable with, or make one up. We don't care. The important point is to have a conversation and an interactive dialogue where you write on the map and say, let's build something here. No, I don't like that, erase. Let's build something else over here. So I think, Kalia, what did I miss?
If you read the activity objective, there's a description that describes what is more set in stone and where you can kind of be more imaginative. And like Rachel said, there are vacant areas. The commercial area is also indicated as well. So take the constraints that we've given you, but also feel free to go beyond the rules and be as creative as possible. The goal is to build the 500 units.
Questions about the exercise? Was that a question, or was that? Good question. It's about 40 minutes? 40 minutes? How long? 40 minutes. If you're online, then you're going to do the similar exercise, and there should be a map that you can draw on in your session. Sorry, I'm not sure where I should face to say that. If you do have questions, just raise your hand and we'll come around and answer them.
School so that there's closer access to the schools for lower income families who can't afford single family homes, but can still be close in the school district.
Fit the exercise, so this was instructive.
Just so folks know, we didn't make up the 500. That's about what the legislature has asked. It's the medium. There's a low, medium, and high level. So 181, actually, for this town size, that's how many units they are asking for. So that wasn't just arbitrary.
One comment in the chat. One of the Zoom participants wanted to share out, so I'll read off what they mentioned in the chat. This is from Kia, which says, we talked about the challenges of building vertically in Vermont and how to be able to use land effectively and keep character. Thank you, Kia. Oh, another comment? Sure.
How I wonder how everybody approached this subject in an equitable way. If anything was considered, like for instance, I posed the question, why would you put the homeless people in a mobile home park? Like just the mindset. Just a question for you.
Does anyone have an answer or reflection to that question?
Immediacy. I brought it up. A lot of people who are living in their cars don't have anywhere to go, and thought would be immediate placement, and it could be transitional, but would be so if someone is no longer living in their home, and what we're experiencing right now is it's hard to get someone into a place, a shelter. So we need to have more transition homes, more transition places to be of short-term moderation. If you're living in your car, a mobile home looks really nice. So.
Thank you.
We'll take one more, but 10:35 is the next session.
I want to take this last comment and then we'll wrap up.
Just responding to the, responding with equity piece, sorry, can you hear me? We all really stuck to our roles, and I think that is something that happens, is that people really stick to what they want and not thinking a lot about other people in these scenarios. So that was definitely the feeling I got, which is a consistent theme.
Thank you. One more quick comment.
All of the characters that the characters that were developed for this, it seemed like the writer of this game intentionally left out any of the people from the protected classes. Like, there was no person with a disability, there was no person of color, there was no person with a military background. Like, we didn't necessarily know what people's marriage status was. So I thought that was just an observation that I made. Right? How we don't even know how they would think in terms of those particular issues.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't know if these people fall into what their membership could be in protected classes. But thank you all so much for participating in this activity. It's been really great to hear your reflection, and it sounds like it was as difficult as it is in reality. And I appreciate you all taking on this challenge. Thank you to everyone who participated on Zoom as well. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness and everything that was discussed in your breakout rooms.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.